Okay, we're back. This is class 5 on the Maamar V'heinif Yado ala Nohar, which is turning out to be more a Maamar about Torah than about Kriyas Yamsuf and B'kiyas HaNohar. In other words, the Maamar begins to discuss the idea that when Mashiach comes, Hashem is going to split the river, Bina. In explaining the idea that the Eibush is going to split the river, the Rebbe goes back and explains also the idea that when the Jewish people left Egypt, it was Kriyas Yam, the Eibush split the sea, which is Kabbalistically Malchus. But the Maamar made it clear that these events were not only miracles. They were stage setters for giving of Torah, for the Eibush, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us the Torah. Now, what is Torah? What is Torah? What exactly did Hashem give the world when HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when the Eibush gave the world His Torah? Obviously, on a simple level, on the simplest of levels, Torah is Miloshen Hira. Torah teaches us how to live our lives practically and behaviorally every day, every week, every month, every year, a whole lifetime, generations. Torah teaches each and every one of us, each and every mitzvah that we need to know and have throughout our life and our history and so on. It's a ma'is hashayason ve'ela shaleisei asena. What to do and what not to do. In addition, Torah is chachmasei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the Torah we have the wisdom of God. The notion of divine wisdom is in itself an interesting idea, because Hashem is Ein Seif, Hashem is higher than wisdom. But Hashem Kavayachol lowered himself to the Madrege where there is wisdom. And in the Madrege where there is the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu means the Chochmah, the Seichel of Hashem, which is perfect. And I don't know if you could call it infinite. But it's a wisdom whose perfection, whose truth has no limit, is ad infinitum. The wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or in the expression that we have in the Hayom Yom, which is so famous, Chukim vos schaffen Leben, a way of life, a teaching which is not a consequence of life, a result of living, but the cause for living. It's before life. It's the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the blueprint for how we created the world, and therefore the blueprint for how we should live in the world which He created according to that Torah. But of course, in Pnimiyas HaTorah, in Kabbalah, and in Chassidus, we learn that there's so much more to the Torah. That besides the Torah teaching us how to live, and besides the Torah teaching us Hashem's wisdom, through the Torah Hashem reveals Himself. Hashem and the Torah are one, and in the Torah Kvayachol we have the Eibush Himself. That says in Tanya chapter 4, Perek Dalet. And over there it means Taka Atzmos, not Oyer. And when a Yid learns Torah, through the Torah has a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In slightly different words, but for all intents and purposes, for basic purposes, the same idea, the Torah not only reveals the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Chochmah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the Ein Seif, the godliness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, not just the Metzias of Elokus, but also the Mahus of Elokus, the essence of godliness. And the way Torah works is that it has level after level after level after level, higher and higher and higher and higher. There's a story, which actually is a Maamar from the Alter Rebbe, which is now printed. That's the explanation of the story. But the way the story goes is that Baal Shem Tov made a big Gaon, and Baal Shem Tov asked the Gaon to say Advar Torah, a Chiddush. And the Gaon said a Chiddush, and Baal Shem Tov refuted it, shlugged it up. The Gaon, of course, tried very hard to defend his Chiddush, his Svara, and the Baal Shem Tov showed him that it was categorically wrong. So he conceded that it was wrong. As soon as the Gaon conceded that his Chiddush was wrong, the Baal Shem Tov turned the tables on him and defended it, and showed him that the Svara was correct. But now the Gaon found himself in the position of having to defend his admission that his Dvar Torah had originally been refuted. So he was, in other words, arguing that what the Baal Shem Tov said before, that his Chiddush was incorrect, was correct, until the Baal Shem Tov convinced him that no, what he had said in the first place was true. And as soon as the Gaon was convinced that the Baal Shem Tov refutation was refuted and his original svara was in place, the Baal Shem Tov turned the tables again and proceeded to refute the refutation of the original refutation. And again he played with this guy back and forth, and each time he would be so convincing that the Gaon was convinced that what he had said before was wrong, and the Baal Shem Tov showed him it was right, and again, Chayzeh Chalila. And the Baal Shem Tov explained, or this Maamar from the Alter Rebbe, which is now published, explains that Torah exists in every world. And the understanding of Torah in each world is emes in that world. But compared to a higher world, it's sheker. And in the higher world, there's a higher Torah. And when you go from a lower level to a higher level, what was emes in the lower level becomes sheker in the higher level. But when you go to a higher level still, what was emes in the second level is sheker in the third level, and higher and higher ad ein sof. So the Baal Shem Tov therefore said, in every kasha I can give a teretz, and every teretz I can ask a kasha. Just go to a higher world. In other words, the Torah reveals the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not only on a practical level of teaching us Musar and Midas, how to live practically, but also Chachmasai, the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that exists on many levels. And ultimately in the Torah you don't only have Chachma, Seichel, you also have Oyed, Ein Seif. Through the wisdom of the Torah you come to know the Ein Seif, godliness. How? So it's a complicated formula, mystical formula, that says that the Pnimius Abba, Pnimius Atik, the depth of Chachma is Oyed, the depth of understanding is Ein Seif, and if a person delves deeply enough into the Torah, he reaches not only the Chachma of the Torah, but also the Oyed, the Ein Seif, the Ruach HaKodesh, which is higher than Chachma. The idea that when a person learns Torah, he understands, and the higher he goes, the deeper and the finer and the edler his understanding is. But that eventually there's a level which is higher than simple seichel, intellect. And you cross over from a haskalah to an from a eirelaki, a godliness, needs to be explained. Because even when a person relates to the Torah on a level of elakus, it's hasaga. Hasaga means it's coming into that person's mind, it's coming to that person's brain, to whatever, however you will explain that. In other words, Torah is a revelation from God to people. And it's a revelation from God to people that reaches people. Over the years, we've had many opportunities to translate the word Gilui. What is revealed? What does revelation mean? And I've told you on a number of occasions that there are several rules that govern the definition of the term Gilui. The first rule that governs Gilui is that it has to be El Azulas. You can only reveal to someone other, you can't reveal to yourself. The second rule of Gilui is that it's only revealed to the other when that other receives it. And the third rule of Gilui is that since Gilui means you're revealing to somebody else, and since Gilui means you're revealing to somebody else in such a way that somebody else gets it, the third rule of Gilui is that that person determines what you can be Magal. Every person is limited, and therefore every Gilui is limited, and you could intend to teach the deepest things that you know to people. If they don't have the capacity to hear them and to understand them and to learn them, it's not possible to reveal it to them. So Gilui has a number of different rules, and ultimately Gilui means Gvul. When you reveal to somebody else, it's only revealed to them if they get it, and if they are finite, what you're able to reveal to them is finite accordingly, and they determine the extent of the Gilui. You cannot give somebody something that they're not able to receive. And that's what Torah is. Torah is the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which He revealed to us. And revealed to us means it reaches us. And on the lower levels we understand simple things on a simple level. On a higher level we understand more sophisticated things on a more sophisticated level. And on the highest levels we're relating to lakus, to oir, to godliness. But even the relating to godliness is also a chokhmah. In other words, it's also a concept of oir and keli. It's reaching the person in a pnimiistic way. However you understand these ideas on the highest of levels. You know, I've mentioned to you in the past that you have a hayom yom, right? that's on Sukkot, about Simchas Beis HaSheyeva, where the Rebbe brings the Gemara that says that what is the meaning of Simchas Beis HaSheyeva? That Shemisham Sheyav Im Ruach HaKodesh. From Simchas Beis HaSheyeva, you're able to draw Ruach HaKodesh. And there's a story where the Tzemach Tzedek said that the Alter Rebbe said a certain Maamar after many times, I think 6 times. And the Tzemach Tzedek said that when you heard the Maamar from the Alter Rebbe, Misham Sheyav Im Ruach HaKodesh, it gave you Ruach HaKodesh. But then that particular Yom finishes with defining what Ruach HaKodesh means. And he brings some Yerushalmi with the Korban Ha'eda. I don't have that Yom in front of me, so I'm not going to say it precisely, but the Teichen Advarim is that what is Ruach HaKodesh? Helam of Chochmah. In other words, Ruach HaKodesh and even Nevuah is also Chochmah. It also comes into the mind of the person. But when it comes into the mind of the person on a level where the person understands it, it's called Seichel. When it comes into the mind of a person on a level which is a little bit higher than understanding, but it's on a level of inspiration, it's called Ruach HaKodesh. How do you explain what's the difference between a Seichel and a Ruach HaKodesh? In simple words, the difference between a Seichel and a Ruach HaKodesh means Seichel is an idea that if I understand it, I can explain it to you. Ruach HaKodesh is an idea that I may be able to know it myself, but I can't explain it to you because I know it not as an idea which comes down into Eisias and Oid. I know it b'derech Oid, b'derech Ruach HaKodesh. And as the story goes, and again, these are all ideas that over the years we've discussed, repeated, come upon him again and again. This is one of those wonderful stories, at least I think it's a wonderful story, with the Rebbe Rashab and the Chassid Reb Chaim Ber. Reb Chaim Ber lived in Kremenchug. And he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yosef Tamarkin. Rabbi Yosef Tamarkin was the Kremenchuger Rav. Unfortunately, he passed away young in Tafresh Lamed Daled. He was succeeded by a very young son-in-law who would serve as Rav 60 years. In Kremenchuger's name was Rabbi Yitzchak Rafalovich. But the Shver, Rabbi Yosef Tamarkin, was a Godel B'Yisrael. He was a Gon Adir in Nigla and Nister, and he knew Kol Chadrei HaTeirah. Was a very, very great. He was a Gadol B'Yisrael Mamish. And he was one of the 3 Rabbonim that sat on the Din Torah of the Tzemach Tzedek's sons after the Istalkus. When Tzemach Tzedek passed away, there was a Din Torah about Yerusha. So there was a Bezdin. And the Bezdin was Rabboni Chabad. Who was the Bezdin? Rabbi Yosef Tamarkin, the Peretz Chayin, the Peretz Sheniyever. And the third was the Teras Chesed, Reb Shlomo Zalman Fratkin, who was the Rav in Lublin, and then at the end of his life he lived in Eretz Yisrael. So basically, Tamarkin was a Goan Olam. He was the Rav and the Mora, the Asre, as the Rebbe always says, the owner of the space of the city of Kremenchuk. And he was such a powerful man, he ruled the city Berama. There were tens of thousands of Jews in Kremenchuk, and he oversaw all of the affairs of the city, whether it was the Bikur Chelim, or the Talmud Teres, or the Halvoya Sameis, or whatever it was. When he passed away, it took an army, it took a whole bunch of people to be able to fill the shoes he left. One of the things that Yosef Tamarkin did in Kremenchuk was that he created a kihil of Chassidishe Chabad. He was the Rav of the whole city. He wasn't only the Rav of Chassidishe Chabad, but he had also a kibbutz of Chassidim. And amongst the people who were in the base of Tamarkin's kibbutz of Chassidim was a group of individuals that are known as the Kremenchuger Beralach. A handful of them, 3 or 4 or 5 Yidden, who happened to have Ber or Deiv Ber in their name. And they were the Talmidim of Yosef Tamarkin. And the Kremenchuger Beralach, there's a famous ning which is attributed to them called it's a Geschmack ning. Kremenchuger Beralach, it's attributed to them collectively. And they were the Talmidim of Rabbi Yosef Tamarkin. When Rabbi Yosef Tamarkin passed away very suddenly, it became necessary to divide up all the responsibilities that he had. And of course, the Rabbanus was given to his son-in-law, but there were all kinds of community things that had to be given to others because one human being was not able to do what this man was able to do. And of course, one of the things that needed to happen was that there had to be a new leadership amongst the kibbutz of Anash, of Lubavitch Chassidim in Kremenchuk at that time. The youngest of the Beralach was Reb Chaim Ber, the youngest. But he was an incredible mind, an oise giving lich a cup. But, as the Rebbe Rashab said about him, as great a man as he was, he lived in this world, and he understood people's limitations. And he understood that if you want to make people into Chassidim, you can't make them into Chassidim, making them into Mishagoyim. Crazy. It's a long story with a lot of details, but he had to separate from the other Bet Halacha, for one Bet Halacha in particular, because he felt that he was building a Tolker Kehila, a Kehila of Tayu, not an orderly community, not a good community, not a healthy community, not a sustainable community. And he wanted to build a healthy community of Anash, of Chassidei Chabad. His name was Chaim Ber Vilensky. And that's what happened. He actually passed away quite young. He passed away before the Rabbi Ber Masayevet, who was the other Bedel that had survived. And they didn't. It was a one-way. Chaim Ber built his own community. He built his own shul. And the Moshe Ber was makpid. He was very upset about it. But Rabbi Chaim Ber passed away before him. Rabbi Ber said, in other words, after he opposed him for all those years, he said, "It's a shod. I should have passed away. He should have lived. As Rabbi Chaim Ber would gelebt, would developed von dem epis gehat." This is not a direct quote. I don't remember the quote verbatim, but the Teichen Advarim was, at the end of his life, his friends admitted that the way they were teaching Chassidus Chabad was not normal and not sustainable. And what Rabbi Chaim Ber did was normal, was correct, to create people who are Chassidim, healthy people living in the real world who are Chassidei Chabad. In any case, Rabbi Chaim Ber was a very big chassid. It was a big maskell. When the Rebbe Rasha became a Rebbe, he was very young. And the Chassidim were very sensitive to the kavod of the Rebbe Rasha. So the story goes that once the Kremetchuge Rav, Rabbi Yitzchak Yael Rafalovich, the son-in-law of Rabbi Yosef Tamarkin, was in Lubavitch, and he was by Yechidus by the Rebbe Rashab. So the Rebbe Rashab tells him, it's a strange thing. I wrote a letter to Rabbi Chaim Ber and he didn't answer me. A Rebbe writes you a letter and you don't answer, it's beyond the pale. It's such a chutzpah, it's so insensitive. So when Rabbi Yitzchak Yael Rafalovich came back to Kremenchuk, he ran to Rabbi Chaim Ber's house and he gave him a chelik. He let him have it. How could it be the Rebbe writes you a letter and you don't answer? So Rabbi Chaim Ber took the Nezifa, Shemim Cherposam Ve'inam Meshivim, with the ganze Bittel. And when he was finished, Rabbi Chaim Ber said to the Kremenchuge Rav, to Harav Yitzchak Yael Rafalovich, "You just got upset at me that the Rebbe told you that he wrote me a letter and I didn't answer him. Did the Rebbe tell you what was in the letter? Did he tell you what was in the letter?" So Rabbi Yael said no. So Chaim Ber told him as follows: the Rebbe Rashab asked I should explain to him Pshat and a Maamar. I explained to him Pshat and Imrei Bina. So when a Rebbe asks you to explain Pshat and a Maamar, what do? You answer him? So Rabbi Chaim Ber said to Rabbi Yitzchak Yael Rafalovich, wird sich einkehren on mir. He doesn't need my help to understand Pshat and a Maamar. He'll figure it out himself. And of course, Harav Yitzchak Yael Rafalovich agreed that the Rebbe doesn't need a chassid to help Pshat and a Maamar. What happened later was this. Rabbi Chaim Ber was in Lubavitch for Shavuos one year. And Kedarke, he was in the Chabadnitze, he was in the Cheder Sheni, he was davening. The Rebbe Rashab walked into the Cheder Sheni and he watched him daven. He stood for a while, 10 minutes, 20, he watched Rabbi Chaim Ber daven. And after watching him for a long time, he walked away. And when he walked away, he said the following. He was reacting to Rabbi Chaim Ber's comment from the months earlier to the Kremenchuge Rav. He said, is gerecht. Ich habe sich gekannt einkehren ohne. Ich habe gewollt aber sehen, sie mit Seichel allein kämen dort durchgehen, durchtun. Und ich sehe, als man kann mit Seichel allein durchgehen. In English, this means Rebbe Rashab said, he's right, I didn't need his help to understand Pshat and a Maamar. I didn't need his help to understand Pshat and a Maamar. My question was only whether this particular point in Imrei Bina can be understood with a human mind or not understood with a human mind. So I asked him, a chassid, and now I'm putting my words into the story, who's not about Ruach HaKodesh, if he understands Pshat and the Maamar. And if he'll understand Pshat and the Maamar, I'll know that this is one of those ideas that you're able to understand with Seichel. And then he concluded by saying, by watching him daven, he came to the conclusion that, this can be understood. In other words, the Rebbe Rashab had a problem. He learned the Maamar Chassidus and he understood what he saw in the Maamar Chassidus. But he wasn't sure if this understanding was in a level of Oyed, as we call it, in a level of Ruach HaKodesh, or in a level of Seichel. So you ask a chassid who doesn't have Ruach HaKodesh. And if the chassid understands it also, then you know you can understand it. And if the chassid doesn't understand it, you're not sure if you're understanding or you haven't even Ruach HaKodesh. There's a famous word from the Rabbi Zalman, which is brought in L'Shem Ha'ezen. Zalman Duchman wrote a sefer called L'Shem Ha'ezen. And the sefer L'Shem Ha'ezen is stories for the most part that he heard from his Zayde. His Zayde was a Mordechai. Mordechai was a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek, and was from the Yeshua by Rabbi Zalman, which is incredible. Rabbi Zalman was the chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And Mordechai said a story that Rabbi Zalman once said the following words. The Alter Rebbe always had Ruach HaKodesh. The Mittel Rebbe had Ruach HaKodesh anytime he wanted. And the Tzemach Tzedek had Ruach HaKodesh on occasion, from Zeit to Zeit. So of course the Chassidim got upset, because he was obviously speaking to the daughter of the Tzemach Tzedek, and he was apparently speaking less of the Tzemach Tzedek than of the Mittel Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe. So they right away asked him, how do you know? You have Ruach HaKodesh yourself, that you can say Bevinus on the Ruach HaKodesh of this Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, the previous Rebbe. Hat Rabbi Zalman, Rabbi Zalman said, Ruach HaKodesh hab ich nicht, aber a Maven bin ich. I don't have Ruach HaKodesh, but I'm a Maven. I can discern. I'm a Maven. I can understand. But then he added, Amol is beser nicht haben Ruach HaKodesh. There are times that you'd rather not have Ruach HaKodesh. In other words, it's not necessarily that by saying that the Tzemach Tzedek has only Ruach HaKodesh on occasion, that he was speaking less than the Tzemach Tzedek. Could be it's more. Why? Because there's such a thing called understanding Torah, Havanas HaTorah. Ruach HaKodesh is seeing it, it's not understanding it. The concept of Ruach HaKodesh, Mishama Yeshev Ruach HaKodesh, is there is a line in the nefesh. Lower than that line is called seichel. When you understand something, you understand it with your mind. And higher that line is called oir. You know it with derech Ruach HaKodesh. And the pnimius, the soul of every idea, the pnimius of every seichel is oir, is a lukus. So even though it's not brought down to a level of understanding, which you call oisius and oir, it's the pnimius of something which can be understood. To say what I'm saying in different words, in practical words, how do you validate, how do you prove that a theory, that an idea, that a svara that you have is true? The answer, of course, is you test it. But it cannot be tested by the person who espoused the idea, or came up with the idea. Because the person who thought of the idea in the first place is so biased towards his idea, he can't judge it objectively. Somebody else has to judge it. So if you have an idea and somebody else has to judge it, you have to be able to explain it to them. In order to be able to explain it to them, you have to be able to use words. In order for you to use words, that idea, that theory has to be sufficiently real, sufficiently brought down to be able to be put into words. Oftentimes, there are ideas that you simply cannot put into words. So even though you understand it, you can't tell it to somebody else. And the dogma in Chassidus for this is the Gemara wegen Shosek Rav, right? I'm getting a little bit too long in my introduction, so the Rav was asked a kasha on a certain halacha that he said, and Rav didn't answer. And there's a rule in all of Shas that when a Tana or an Amoyed is asked a question and he doesn't answer the question, that means he's admitting that he's wrong. So if Rav is asked a question and Rav keeps quiet, Rav is admitting that he doesn't have an answer. So if he doesn't have an answer, the halacha should not be like Rav. And yet the fact is that according to some poskim, you poskim like Rav. There's a whole footer for the Rebbe in Sefer HaMaimorim Toshin Test from the Frierdiker Rebbe where he discusses this whole thing. It brings Makairis for it. So the question becomes, if Rav was asked a question and he was silent, and we say that silence is acquiescence, being quiet, admitting that you don't know. So why do you paskin like Rav? So Chassidus explains because it's possible that the Rav understood this idea on a level which is called midas shebechachma, the emotions, midas of chachma. According to Kabbalah, the beginning of seichel, the beginning of ideas, which is oisei ve'er. In other words, you understand something in such a way that there are enough words attached to it, that you can explain it to somebody else, that you can debate it or defend it, is Yesod Abba, the Barak HaMavrik, the flash, the Kudus HaSkala. Midas of Chachma is above that. So Rav understood why he paskined this way. But Rav also understood that he can't possibly explain it, so he kept quiet. But in this rare case, because of who Rav was, we don't interpret his silence as admitting that he's wrong, but we're interpreting his silence as him saying, I don't have an ability to explain it to you, but I myself understand it, and we trust that Rav Seichel is Eis Gehalten. So this is what it says in the Hayom Yom, that Ruach HaKodesh is when a Seichel is above being able to be brought down into words, and above being able to be explained to somebody else. In other words, the Pnimius of Seichel is Alakus. Behind ideas is Ein Seif, is godliness. But behind ideas is godliness in such a way that the godliness is revealed. Revealed means to say that the person who has the Ruach HaKodesh, the person who has the Chochmah, the Nevuah, appreciates whatever it is that's being revealed to him as a concept which is the source of lower concepts which make sense, which are rational, which are intellectual. But because of their sublime nature, it doesn't come down into a level where you understand it in such a way where you can explain it to somebody else and argue it and defend it and so on. So the Eibishter gave us the Torah, he gave us much, much more. I'm going back to my original point. When the Eibishter gave us the Torah, he gave us much, much more than ideas that teach us how to live our lives practically. Much, much more than ideas that teach us the wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the Torah we have Ein Seif, godliness. But you see, in the Torah, the godliness is revealed in such a way that it's revealed. It reaches us. Because if the godliness does not reach us, it's not revealed to us. And that's the difference between a lower level of learning Torah and a higher level of learning Torah. A lower level of learning Torah understands a concept on a level of intellect. A higher level of learning Torah understands a concept on a level of intellect, but from the intellect the person comes to the union of Ruach HaKodesh. And then you have people, very special people, very lofty people, who can relate to idea on the level of Elokus first, and from the level of Elokus they can bring it down to the Madrega of Seichel, like the difference between Rabbi and his friends that gets brought is a Maamar in Samach Tita Nemas Yankiv, where the Rebbe Rashab says this. But the highest levels of learning Torah are those people who can relate to the Torah as the Torah is Oyer, the Torah is Ein Seif. Like I explained to you in the previous class, that in the Tirasa Shal Rab Meir Hayakosov Kostnes Oyer B'Yalef. Rab Meir had a Sefer Torah. And in his Sefer Torah was written Kostnes, that the shirt that Adam Rechava wore was made of light. Because he was in such a high, and it was a kosher Sefer Torah for him, because he was such a high madrega that he related to Torah as Torah is Oyer. Torah is on the level of Oyer, level of Ein Seif. In other words, and to summarize and repeat what I just said, Torah is the divine communication from God to world. And the meaning of divine communication means that it comes from Him and it reaches us. But there are so many levels. And there are so many neshamas. There are levels who understand, people like us understand Torah on a very limited level, in a very low world. There are greater minds who understand Torah in a more infinite way, in a higher world. And then there are neshamas who cross over from simply understanding the intellect of the Torah to understanding the light, the divine Ein Seif, which is in the Torah. And in this itself there are levels, until there are those neshamas who relate to the Ein Seif directly, so to speak, without it being mislabish and asias at all. And the Rebbe is teaching us in this Maamar, the Alter Rebbe is teaching us in this Maamar, that when the Eibishter wanted to give us the Torah, right? Hashem wanted to give us the Torah. What does the Torah mean? A revelation from God to the world. And as I explained to you, when God Almighty gave us the Torah, the revelation that He gave from Himself to His world has to be two things. Number one, it has to reach us. If it doesn't reach us, He hasn't revealed it. And number two, it has to come from Him. It has to be His truth. In other words, on the one hand, people are able to understand it. On the other hand, hidden within this understanding of the Torah is a higher level and a higher level until you reach Madregas of Ein Seif, of Elokus. So the Rebbe therefore said, before Hashem gave us the Torah, that hidden in the Chochmas HaTorah, you have Eira Torah, on a lower level of Eira Torah, and a higher level of Eira Torah, a Gilui, and Etzem, and so on and so forth. You have a Kriyas Yamsuf and a Bekiyas HaNor. Hashem had to shatter a divide between a lower level and a higher level so that godliness should be able to reach us. But Matan Torah, when the Eibishter gave us the Torah, you know the famous quote which is brought in Ayin Beis, and it's repeated I think in Hayom Yom, but the Rabbi used to repeat it all the time, Matan Torah la'yeh edapam. Hashem is never going to give the Torah again. Torah is giving was only once. Even the idea which is brought in Rashi and Shir Hashirim, that when Mashiach comes, Mefzachani, Me'itei, Sha'osid Laifia Eida Leim, and He's going to reveal Seita Meo Mr. Tzvei Nesehu. When Mashiach comes, Hashem is going to reveal a higher Torah. So the Rebbe says there's never going to be another Matan Torah. When the Eibishter gave us the Torah, he gave it all to us. And of course, when the Eibishter gave us the Torah and he gave it all to us, the point is that ultimately all of the Torah should reach us. Not only the simple ideas which we understand on a simple level, but the deeper ideas which need much more work and understood in a much more abstract way, until the ideas which you can't even call seichel, they're called oir. And nevertheless, it reaches us in Eifen of Hasaga. It reaches us. So this Maamar, which started off talking about Kriyas Yamtov and B'kiyas Hanor, has become a Maamar about Torah. That Hashem has to break a divide to reveal godliness of Torah from a higher level to a lower level. Because that's what Torah is. God's revealing himself to us in such a way that we're able to receive it in the keli of our Me'ach. And since there's two concepts in him giving us the Torah, the concept of giving us Torah which happened historically at Matan Torah, and the concept of the new Torah Kvayachal, which is going to be further revealed when Mashiach comes, accordingly you have two events. You have the Kriyas Yamsuf, which breaks the divide between Malchus and the higher world and the lower world. And when Mashiach comes, you have B'kiyas Hanor, which breaks the divide between what is above Bina and below Bina, to allow Alakus, from the etzem of Alakus, to come into the lower world, which is going to be when Mashiach comes. What's the difference? The difference is that Kriyas Yamsuf allows Atzilus to be revealed in Bria, and B'kiyas Hanor allows Ein Seif to be revealed in Atzilus, and from Atzilus in the lower world. And this is what we've been learning about, right? That the Eibishter gave us the Torah, and the point of his giving us the Torah is that we should receive the Torah. And that Seif Kol Seif, a Yid, a human being, could understand the Torah and experience even the levels of Torah which are higher than understanding than the Madrega of Ruach HaKodesh. That you know B'derech Oir, but you know what you relate to Ein Seif, to godly light. But the prerequisite in order for this to be able to given was Kriyas Yamsuf and B'kiyas Hanor. So the Rebbe continues to explore this idea in more detail. After he generalized and explained in general that Kriyas Yamsuf broke the divide between Atzilus and Bria, so there should be a gili of Atzilus, of Ein Seif, from Atzilus into Bria in the Torah, and that in order for Hashem to reveal Ein Seif, which is higher than Atzilus, into Atzilus, when Mashiach comes, there has to be B'kiyas Hanor. You have to go past Bina to Chochmah and Ein Seif to reveal the Atzmas of Ein Seif into Atzilus and the lower worlds, which happens when Mashiach comes. Now that he explained that in general, it goes into the specifics. What are the specifics? The specifics are that when Yidden left Mitzrayim, when the Eibishter split the Yamsuf, he divided it into 12 parts. Logez, the Yamsuf, Logzorim, was every Shevet was by itself. When Mashiach comes, Hashem is going to divide the Nod into 7 tributaries, 7 parts. The Shiva and Acholim. So as you'll see in this Maamar, momentarily explained in Kabbalah, the division into 12 is because the barrier between Atzilus and Bria is 12 Yud Beis Bakar. And the dividing of the Yamsuf into 12 means bringing Atzilus, Ein Seif, into the low, Gili of Atzilus, Gili of Ein Seif, into the lower worlds, through the 12 channels of the Yud Beis Bakar between Atzilus and Bria. And when Mashiach comes, there's going to be a higher revelation, and this high revelation travels through not 12 passages, 12 channels, but 7 channels which correspond to the 7 midas. It's a higher level. But the point of the godliness traveling through 12 or 7, whatever the case is consistent with the basic idea that we call Oir Bekeli. The whole idea is that the godliness reaches us, and the godliness does not reach us if it shines in a plain, infinite way. And the significance of being divided up into pathways or passages means that the light or the ideas are being brought from a higher level to a lower level in the way that they're palatable. And now we begin line 135. Now that we generalized about the basic ideas of Kriyas Yamsuf and B'kiyas Hanor as representing breaking a barrier, to reveal godliness from a higher level to a lower level, Kriyas Yamsuf, the barrier between Atzilus and Bria, and B'kiyas Hanor, the barrier between Ein Sof and Atzilus. We go into the specifics. That the barrier between Ein Seif and Atzilus, which is going to be shattered, Lasid Lovi, to reveal the Ein Seif in Teira, the Ein Seif higher than Atzilus, and the Teira of Atzilus, so that ultimately that will reach us as well. So it says, V'hikol l'shiva nacholim. It's broken up into 7 channels, 7 tributaries, 7 rivers. What's the number 7? Keneged Gimel Oves V'dal Demois, against the 3 patriarchs and the 4 matriarchs. You probably know that there's a concept of Shiva Royim, 7 shepherds. And in the Gemara Masechta Sukkah, they list who the Shiva Royim are. The Zohar brings a different cheshbon of Shiva Royim. But in Torah 8 it says that there are ways that you explain the Shiva Royim that it goes on the 3 obvious and the 4 ways. And that's what Alter Rebbe brings here. Kihine, and he prefaces, Hayud Beis Shvatim, there are 12 Shvatim. And the 12 Shvatim are the basis for the fact that when Kriyas Yamsov happened, the Yam was split into 12 parts, because Heim Bebriya, they're in Briya. V'nikroyim Merkafta Tata, the Shvatim are collectively the lower chariot, and the lower chariot has 12 legs, Yud Beis Boker of Elam Abriya. And whatever passes from Atzilus to Briya comes through one of these 12 passages. But that's between Atzilus and Briya. What about between Ein Sof and Atzilus? So he continues and he says, Aval Oves Hein Hamerkava. The Oves are also a chariot, but Hainu Merkafte Lo, the Atzilus, the higher chariot, the chariot which carries Ein Sof into Atzilus, as opposed to Atzilus into Briya. Hainu Shem Chagas the Atzilus, which means that there's 7 midas of Atzilus, which is the Merkava of Atzilus. So he says on line 42, V'hine, K'meisha HaShvatim. We know about the Shvatim, that Imayez Chein Atzmon Bebriya, the Shvatim exist in Elam Abriya, their level is Elam Abriya. And as you know what says in Chassidishe, that's why the Shvatim chose to be shepherds, because since they were in the lower world, they were vulnerable to the test of the lower world. So they chose to be shepherds, so they should be isolated from the lower world. The world should not be able to interfere with the Avodas Hashem. It's also true, Yeshlan Sheidish or Makar B'Atzilus. They also have a source in Atzilus, which is Shalamaylam Abriya, above Briya. They themselves, the Shvatim themselves, the level of the Yudbei Shvatim is in El Mabriya. Of course, with the exception of Yosef HaTzadik, is in El Mabriya. But they have a Sheidish in Atzilus. And you should know that in some Maamar Chassidishe, it's mentioned later, but Kitzur Bavla, they use the word Shevet and Mata, right? There's Maamar Chassidishe, that the word for the tribes is Shevet, but we also find in Chumash that the word for the tribes is Mata. And it's explained what's the difference between the Hebrew word shevet and the Hebrew word mata. Mata means a stick. And shevet means a soft stick, a flexible stick, a whip. So it's explained that it's the same stick, the same piece of wood. When it's attached to the tree and it's living, it's soft, it's pliable, it bends. When you cut it from the tree and it's allowed to dry, it becomes a mata, it becomes a stick. So there are the matais, the way the shvatim are in the lower world, and you have the shvatim, those same Shvatim, the way they are in Atzilus, where they're still alive or soft and pliable and bendable and so forth and so on. So in Briya they'd be called Matais, and in Atzilus they'd be called Shvatim, Shiftei Kol, like it's brought. Im Kol Zeh, nevertheless, Yeshen Sheidu Shemokar B'Atzilus, Shalamaylam Abriya. The Shvatim have a source in Atzilus which is higher than Briya. Ela the Sham, who Rak Shoshan or Makedan Levad, the way the Shvatim are in Atzilus, only the source of the Shvatim, but not the actual. In other words, the physical human beings, Reuven, Shimon, and so on and so forth, their Madrega was Briya, which meant that they understood the Lukus very well, as is understood in El Mabriya. But the notion of experiencing Ein Sof was higher than them. Aval Hein Atzman Babriya, they themselves were El Mabriya, or Kamayma, like it says in the Siddur, Neshama Shenasat B'Teherehi. The source of the neshama is in Atzilus, where it is pure. V'achakach ata brosa yesh meyayin. It's created from being a neshama in Atzilus, which is called Tahir. It's created in Briya in the way of Briya. And of course, v'ein arecha Briya l'gabi Atzilus. You cannot compare the Shvatim, the way they exist actually, the Madrega of El Mabriya, to the way they exist in Atzilus, which is their Sheidish. And as I said before, if you wanted to put form to it in El Mabriya, you have the highest level of understanding the Eibishter. In Atzilus you can experience the Mahus of Elokus, godliness itself. The Shvatim's level was to understand the Elokus at the very highest levels, and they were removed from their source, which is the revelation of godliness in the 7 midas. Line 146, which is why, that Kedei sheyischabru hein atzmon im shorshan mamish. If you're going to connect the Shvatim and El Mabriya with their source, in other words, Sheyiyah Gili Atzilus Mamish Behem, that the godliness of Atzilus should reach them. And what is the godliness of Atzilus? It's not only understanding godliness, but it's the experience of godliness itself. But in Elam Atzilus, it's the experience of godliness as it comes into a vessel, which would mean, and there's a number of different ways of understanding this. There's something called Atzilus Sheba Bria, and there's something called Bria Sheba Atzilus, and above both of those, there's something called Atzilus Sheba Atzilus. So one way of explaining it is that first you understand, and then higher than your understanding, there is the inspiration. Another way of understanding it that first you have an inspiration, and from the inspiration it comes down to an understanding. But in Elam Atzilus, there's two parts, right? The chitzonius aspect, the part of the Eid which is close to the Keli, is a hasaga, and the pnimius aspect is an niyam from Eid. So the shvatim, as they are in Bria, only have a hasaga in Elokus. Their shadish is that they have access to the mhus of Elokus itself, the way its Eid is bekelim. So the Rebbe says, "V'lachein b'chdei sheyischabru hein atzmon im shorshan mamish." That means that the shvatim, whose level is Bria, should be attached to where they are in their source, their root. Sheyiyeh gili atzilus mamish, bohem, that they should experience the mehus of Elokus as it is in atzilus to them. In other words, they should not just understand godliness, but they should experience the mehus of godliness, wherever it can be understood by them. Says the Rebbe, "Zeodavka de kriyas yamtiv." You have to shatter a divide. And when you shatter the divide, you bring from atzil, or you break the divide, you crack the divide, you open the divide. There's a gili of atzilus into Bria. There's a very great koyach of the Eibishter, which is able to destroy the separation between atzilus and Bria, and that great koyach brings the elukus of atzilus into Elam Bria. Says the Rebbe, nikra leyud beis gzorim kanal. That's why it's divided up into 12 parts, because this is the barrier between atzilus and Bria, is the yud beis bakar, is the merkav of Elam Bria, and by breaking that divide, you're bringing atzilus into Elam Bria. But the Rebbe continues and he goes higher. Same is true in the office, but everything is a higher level. Obviously, we're not Atzilus, right? What's Atzilus? Atzilus is in safe, Merkava. You don't just understand godliness, you experience godliness itself. But in Atzilus, you're experiencing godliness in and through a Keli. And like I said before, this either means that you first understand, and after the understanding, there's an inspiration. Or first there's an inspiration, but the inspiration is in the kind of way that later it comes down into an understanding. It's never an inspiration of Ein Seif that is above understanding altogether. So Atzilus is a place where Lakus is revealed in Kalim, and that's the Madreg of the Avis. Shehein Atzmon Bezayin Tachtein is Atzilus. They're the vessels of Atzilus. Says the Rebbe, Aval, just like we say about the Shvatim, that they themselves are in Bria, and they have a connection to Atzilus. We say about the others, they themselves are in Atzilus and have a connection to Ein Seif. Even though they're in Atzilus, they have a source. The original source of the others is in Eiver, above the river, which means in Keser. What's Keser? Keser is not Gilui of a Ha'ara of a Mehus of Ein Seif, but Keser is the Etzem of the Mehus of Ein Seif, or the Gilui of the Etzem Mehus of Ein Seif. In other words, higher than Atzilus is godliness that doesn't come down in a level of understanding. It's godliness that remains godly. It comes down into a pnimius as well, because a pnimius ab, a pnimius atik, but it remains a lakus. He calls it later on, mechen stimoy. Kizo batika achet v'talya, because Atzilus is connected with Keser. The midas of Atzilus are connected with Keser. So the Aves are Mereg of Atzilus, which means they have an understanding of godliness, which is not limited to an understanding. They have an understanding of godliness, which connects them to Ein Seif, but Ein Seif that's connected to understanding. Their source is Keser, which is Ein Seif, which is not connected to Kalim, which is not connected to understanding, and there's a barrier between them and their source. The root of the Aves is in Keser. They're in Atzilus. So the Rebbe continues on line 153 and he says, Ochen, however, la'asid, when Mashiach comes, there's going to be again a breaking of a barrier. Al yadei ve'hein if yad al-nar ve'gemen. The Eibishter raises his hand over the river and he breaks the mechitza of the river, which is Bina, so that Ein Seif, which is higher than Atzilus, comes into Atzilus. Ozay yis'alu ha'ovis v'ha'imois. The ovis and the imois, which the makav of Atzilus are raised up, li'es behen gilui, shalamayla me'atzilus, that they should experience revelation which is above Atzilus. In other words, bechinas be'eved hanor v'goymer, the godliness which is higher than the river. As if you remember our discussion, Bina was a barrier because it was revealed. Right? The barrier of the Nor is when it reveals so much Giluyim, it hides on Etzem. And Eved HaNor means you remove the blockage that comes from Gilui, so that you have what's higher than Gilui. What's higher than Gilui is Helam or Etzem. Which is the levels in Kesser. It says in line 156, that the river is going to be broken into 7 branches that are going to carry the Gili Vein Seif, which is higher than Atzilus, into the Hasaga of the Mahus of Ha'ara Vein Seif, which is Atzilus. And he explains, Shagam Kol Yisrael, Yakabla Gilizadeh Ha'avetz Ve'imois. The reason it has to be divided up into 7 is that other Yidden should be able to receive these Giluim to Aves Neimois. The implication in this line is that if the revelation of Ein Seif to the Aves was only for the Aves' own sake, there'd be no need for Zayin Echolim, but because it's been given to Aves, that it should come down Lamata, it has to go through Zayin Echolim. I'm just saying what it says. Pshat, I don't know. Line 106, Vihine. Al Yadei Zeh, the fact that Mashiach comes, Hashem is going to break the Nahar. And not only will godliness be revealed in the world as it relates to Kelim and Seichel, but the godliness is revealed in the world as it is in a level of Etzem, as it is by itself. And by breaking the barrier of the Nor, it makes it possible that there should be his Galus Pnimiyas HaTeira, the revelation of the inner dimension of Teira, which is Taimei Teira, the delight, the pleasure of the Teira. Says the Rebbe, Shahu his Galus Meicha Stima, which is revelation of the level of Mayach, which is secret, ideas which are secret, mysterious. Masha'en Kein, as opposed to Teira Niglas Mechabad, the revealed Teira is Chabad and Atzilus, and the secret Teira is Chabad and Keser. V'lachein, and therefore, Kedei Li is Gilu Izeh, to reveal the godliness of Chabad and Keser that come into Atzilus in the lower worlds, just like Kriyas Yamsuf removes the obstacle between Atzilus and Bria, the Bekiyas HaNor, and going through the river on the dry land, removes the obstacle between Ein Sof and Atzilus. Then what is higher than Atzilus? The Hainu Meichin Stimayim, which is the secret Meichin, which is in Keser, they should come down into Bebri, Yetzira, Asiya, Mamish, into the lower world. Now, I don't want to give you long explanations. And to explain this thoroughly, you have to be a big maven, which I'm not. I need to give huge, deep explanations, which I don't have time for. But the Nakuda is, when you're talking about Chochmah and Keser, you're talking about ideas that exist on a level of Oyer. I explained to you before that there is a line in the realms of ideas. Everything which is below that line is an idea that in technical Kabbalah language is an oisius and oir. It's put into words. There are words that can carry that idea, that can articulate that idea. So long as ideas have words that can be articulated, you can say it to somebody else. You can explain it, you can defend it, you can argue it. Above that line are ideas that don't have sufficient reality to come down to a level where you can put it into words and arguments altogether. The person who knows it as an enlightenment, as an oyer, and he cannot bring it to somebody else. But it's chokhmah, it's seichel. In other words, it's consistent with the rules of seichel, but it's on such a fine and a high level, it's consistent with the rules of seichel. Only that it's not inconsistent with seichel on lower levels, but it's not sufficiently brought down that it can be put into words or argued and debated. So that's called Mechas Man. It's called the Ruach HaKodesh Nevuah. That's basically the idea. And this is the Madrege that the Ovis will reach when Mashiach comes, and they're going to bring it to us as well. There's not only going to be a revelation of Atzilus into Biyah, which is the godliness which is connected to ideas, into the realm of ideas, but Kesed into Atzilus and Biyah, which is Ein Seif, godliness, which is above ideas altogether, are going to be brought down to us as well. V'zehu, and he continues, that when you have the pasuk which is written in the beginning of creation, V'nohar yeitzei me'eden lahashka, it says Hagan, right? When the Eibishter created Gan Eden, there was a place called Eden, and from Eden there was a river that came to Gan Eden, and from Gan Eden there were 4 rivers which come to the world, Chidekel and Pros, and so forth and so on, as they're described in Bereshis. So there's 4 rivers that go from Gan Eden to the world, which Beklalos are the Yud Beis Boker, as they're divided up into 4 groups of 3. 3 from the right, 3 from the left, 3 from the front, 3 from the back. That's 12. And then you have the one river which goes from Eden to Gan Eden. So the Rebbe says, "The Nohar Yetze me Eden lahashkes hasagon." It goes from Eden, which is higher, which is Ein Seif, higher than Bina, into the Nohar, which is Bina, brings it down to the level of Teira. Says the Rebbe, Gan Stodem Deirais, which goes from the 53 Stodem of Teira, which is in Atzilus. So Eden itself is above the Nohar. But the Gan Stodem Deiraisa, the Teira, the way it is in Atzilus. Umisham Yiparid, and the Teira, the way it is in Atzilus, is later divided up as it goes into the lower worlds. And again, if you read the Psukim, Misham Yiparid means it divides up into the 4 rivers which come from Gan Eden into Eilam. And in specific, it's the Yud Beis Gzorim, the Yud Beis Shvatim. So he says, Pirush Yiparid. What is the meaning of the word? That the river flows from Eden into Gan Eden, and from Gan Eden comes into the world, it's the Torah which comes from Eden to Gan Eden to world to correct the lower worlds. So he says, Elam HaPirud means the lower 3 worlds, Bri Yitzir Nasiya. How? Why are they petted? What's petted? Pshatrem is the Drush. Pshat is the Torah that comes till Asiya. Rem is the Torah which comes till Yitzira. Drush is the Torah which comes till Bria. And the Torah in each world correct, bring tikkun to the world which by itself needs tikkun. Shem Bria Yitzira Asiya Shabbat. The Torah of Pshat and Emes Drush are Bria Yitzira Asiya, which is in Atzilus. And then it comes from Bria Yitzira Asiya, which is in Atzilus, to Bria Yitzira Mamish. Shenemar Bo, but Atzilus is written V'lechvedi. V'lechvedi means the Torah in Atzilus. And then it says, B'rosli Yitatev Afasizik Meishin is Bayel, Be Apostle V'lisash Mesmelach V'cholawai in Sham. The Torah comes on into every world. And Visham Yiparid means that the Torah comes on to the 3 worlds, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, to give it a tikkun. So there's the Torah of Bria, and then there's the bringing down of the Torah of Atzilus into Bria. But then he continues on line 176, and he says, there is inyan tikkun elam Atzilus. Just like the lower 3 worlds, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya, need a Torah to come from Atzilus into the lower worlds to create a correction, to effect the correction in the lower worlds. Atzilus also needs a correction. Tikkun of elam Atzilus. Now Atzilus is perfect. But the perfection of Elam Atzilus is Eidus B'Kelim. And higher than Atzilus brings something which is higher than that. To reveal a level of godliness which is completely above Atzilus, completely above Gilui. Says the Rebbe, this also requires a Torah and a B'kiyas Hanor to bring that Torah from the higher level to the lower level. Zehu Ayidei Pnimiyas HaTorah, so the inner neshama of the Torah, which is called Seidah Vayilei, the secret of the Eibishter, which he brings forward to be Mesaken Elam Atzilus. That Elam Atzilus should not only be a Ha'ara and a Gile, but should be connected to Etzem. V'al Tikkun Zeh, this event of correction, which happens by bringing the Torah of Ein Seif into Atzilus, the Pasuk says in our Maamar, V'hei nifnor Yodei al Hanor. The river is Atzilus, is Bina. And the Eibishter raised his hand above the Nor to reveal higher than Atzilus into Atzilus. The river itself later divides up into a Torah, which is the Bria Yitzir Nasiya, which is in Atzilus, which is for the lower worlds. Shumok the Biavatikunah. Avatikun Atzilus, so the correction of Atzilus itself, even though Atzilus is perfect, but it's b'medida v'akbala, says the Rebbe on line 180, Hu ayadei bechina shalamayla mehanor hanal. It's a level which is above the river, and you have to break the river to reveal this etzem. V'zehu v'hikol shiva nechalim, and the dividing it up into 7 pathways. Al derech v'nachal adonecha sashkim. So you have the word nachal, which means a stream or a river. And Adanecha is the shade of the word is Eden. In other words, Gilu B'chinas Eden Atzmi. The idea that Eden, which is normally called Etzem, that means it has no relationship with anything else, comes from a higher level to a lower level in what's called a nachal, a stream, a river, a flow. And now the Rebbe explains the philosophy of this, but in very abstract terms. In other words, what follows is Asis of Chassidus. He uses the Asis of Machshava Dibur Amaisa, but on 3 levels. And I'm just going to read it and translate. V'hainu ki anor zal machshava. Thought is, the river is thought, as opposed to the sea being speech. Says the Rebbe, you have hine machshava dibur amaisa hein beya. You have thought, speech, and deed, which correspond to the 3 words, Bri Yitzir Nasiya. Ad. Then you have thought, speech, and action, which is in Atzilus. But that's Biyasha Ba'atzilus, the Bri Yetzir Nasi, which is the source for Bri in Atzilus, which is the Teda of Atzilus. There's the notion that Hashem's thought is very deep, which is Machshava Dibur U'Maisa Shalamayla Me'aseichel. It's above Atzilus and above Seichel. And the Bekiyas HaNohar, Liyasad Love, which reveals the Etzem of Ein Seif, reveals this Machshava which is higher than Seichel. The revelation of higher than a Noher, which will be when Mashiach comes, is a Gili of pure Lakus. In other words, it's Hasoge in the sense that it comes into a person b'pnimius, but it's not Hasoge in the sense that it's a Gil in Eifen of Esetz, it's a Gil in Eifen of Etzem. And the idea that a human being's body and mind can be able to makabel such an air requires this Bekiyas HaNoher. So we explained further Kriyas Yamsef and Bekiyas HaNoher, why this is 12 and this is 7. And now we move on, right? Because the pasuk on which our Maamar is based says, "V'heinif yadei HaNoher." Hashem raises his hand over the river by Yom Ruche, and the meaning of the words by Yom Ruche means the power of his wind, of his spirit. And then it says, "V'yikol l'shiva necholim." He splits it into 7 streams. So we explained the words "V'heinif yadei HaNoher." We explained the words "V'yikol l'shiva necholim." What about the 2 words by Yom Ruche? And he's going to explain that by Yom Ruche means the koyach of ruach, which is higher than mayim, as you'll see momentarily. Or Pirish by Yom Ruche, what is the meaning? That the koyach that the Eibishter uses with his arm to split the river between Atzilus and Ein Seif. It's called by Yom Ruche, the power of his wind, the power of his spirit, Yesh Lefarish. Api Masham Razal Yom, all the medrash on the pasuk v'ruach Elokim Merachaf Zapnei Hamoyim. That the spirit of Elokus hovers over the face of the water, and the word that's used is the ruach. It says in the Medrash, Zehu Ruach Shel Mashiach, the ruach of Mashiach. Hainu Maida Omer v'Nochal of ruach Havai. See, when it comes to Mashiach, you see the word ruach, wind, spirit, as opposed to mayim. V'hinei b'meisha nema min hamayim mishisu. Meisha chachma v'atzilus, and Meisha comes from water. What's water? Ein Seif, chachma. U'bechinas mayim al yenim, it's the higher waters where Ein Seif and Seichel are one. Shemisham hamshachas haTeira niglas lanu, which Teira is revealed. The Teira we're able to understand, but our Teira which we're able to understand carries Ein Seif. Kemayim sheyedim migavei elanoch. Ach pnimiyas haTeira, the deeper love Teira cannot be compared to water, it has to be compared to ruach. Why? Because even though water is fluid and it can move from one place to another, but it has, you can touch it, right? It has substance. Wind or vapor has no substance, and that's pnimiyas haTeira. Ruach v'zeh b'chinas ruach Elokim merachefes al pnei hamayim l'mayla b'chinas mayim. It's above the level of mayim. V'al zeh nema, the pasuk therefore says that this idea of Bekiyas HaNoher, which allows for the revealing of Etzem of Ein Seif in the Teira and Atzilus and B'yaha, says the Rebbe shezeh b'chinas mayim, the Nohar v'zeh al HaNoher, al higher than the river. The river itself is mayim. And by Yom Ruche, with the power of his ruach, mashallah ma'ila b'bechinas hamayim, what's above the level of water, v'aydei zevei kol v'chulu, which splits the river. V'zehu nimshach adei tshuva, and he finishes this part of the Maamar by saying that this idea that when Mashiach comes, there's a Bekiyas HaNoher, and you reveal etzem of Ein Seif lamatas through tshuva, because the whole concept of tshuva is an avodah which is l'mayla mitam v'das. I've mentioned this to you in the past, that in the Shalah, for example, he calls Bina Stam Tshuva. Bina he calls Tshuva. Why? Because Bina is higher than Ishtalshalos. Ishtalshalos is Zod Malchus. Bina is higher than Ishtalshalos. And he calls it Tshuva because Tshuva is higher than Ishtalshalos. Tshuva also means Mesiras Nefesh. Tshuva means any avodah which is higher than Seichel. And the avodah of Tshuva, the avodah of Mesiras Nefesh, which is higher than Seichel, sets up the breaking of the barrier between Ein Sof and Atzilus. That we find that the word ruach is associated with tshuva in a different pasuk. And then it says ruach aisi ruach va'amshech ruach. That when the Yid does tshuva and he reveals a ruach within himself, it arouses the ruach from the Eibishter. And the ruach which he arouses from the Eibishter comes down to be al hamoyim. V'heinef bayom ruche al hamoyim. In the Mitzvah Hashem, in the next class, we'll continue.